I wanted to talk to you today about what my story is, how I became a singer, how that affected me personally, and what my spiritual path has been as a singer and just as a human being. My name's Ronnie Sarrett Letterman. My websites are vocalfocus.com and voice-movement.com. So for those of you who are my students or potential students and want to know a little more about me, I thought this was a great idea. And I was requested by one of my students to do this. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to make a video about my story. So first of all, I want to start out with saying that I did not speak much when I was young. In fact, I was extremely mortifyingly shy. I was told not to study music by my parents. I was told to study art. So, I like to draw. So I studied art. But I really didn't use my voice very much, but I did like to sing, and I used to get parts in, little tiny plays at camp and things like that, because I could sing. So I think I had a natural voice, and I think I sort of knew I was a singer, but I was so shy that I didn't even deal with it. Like the idea of singing in public was not something I could deal with. Then I hit teenage years, and I went through all kinds of tumult that teenagers go through. And what happened was one day, I loved opera. I loved classical music. I don't know why. I was just very drawn to listening to voices like that. One day I was playing Handel's Messiah when I was babysitting, I think. And I started to open my mouth and sing along with the soprano. This voice, it was like it took over my body. This huge voice on this huge column of air flew out of my body, and I just felt like, okay, I'm going to get out of the way of this force. And I guess I just relaxed, opened up. I felt my ribs opening up, and the sound just came out of me that it blew me away. I couldn't believe that was me, and I loved it. And I think that's my first voice lesson, was that the one that maybe God gave me, was that moment where I realized you have to open up and be a column of air, vibrating sound, and not get in your own way. And I got out of my own way, and I was singing all these high notes easily, and it was phenomenal. So that's where probably my voice got born. So I had no idea that I could sing. And as a very shy, quiet person, this really took me by surprise. I think it's been my life's path to use voice as a way of opening people up, opening myself up, learning to express who you are as a person. It's much more than just singing for me. So those are my experiences as a very shy person with a very unusual voice. Life went on. I became an occupational therapist. I went to Columbia, got my master's. I studied, anatomy, physiology, and how to set goals with people, how to teach people to take care of themselves after a disabling illness or bad arthritis or something like that. But it never was quite me. And I was always singing. And even after I had my son, and when he was 2 years old, I decided to start taking voice lessons again in my 30s before it would be too late. And I did it I jumped in with gusto, because that's what I really wanted to do before I felt too old to do it. In my 20s, I was singing as a folk singer and wrote a few songs, played the guitar, did coffee houses and that kind of thing. But my voice took off with the classical more than the other styles. Though I think that I sort of imitated people like Joni Mitchell and Julie Andrews. And so a lot of my muscle memory is in that kind of a sound, just because of my upbringing. So I started taking voice lessons. And the more I took voice lessons, I would say that my voice just kind of didn't feel right. It didn't quite, I guess I was trying to fix something or do something different. And I kept practicing it. And I practiced every day, but I really wasn't making a lot of progress. I made some, and I learned a lot of music. I got to sing with the Rockland Symphony Orchestra, and I never knew in those days if I was going to have a good voice or not a good voice. And I'd wake up in the morning. So a good day was when I was singing beautifully, and a bad day was when it didn't sound good. I also had this issue where my voice was harsh and bright sounding. I didn't know why, and I couldn't figure out how to get it not to sound like that because I couldn't hear it. You can't always hear these bright, harsh overtones because sound gets filtered in through your eustachian tubes, your inner ear, and you've got bone conduction and all kinds of things going on that you cannot really hear yourself. You have to record. And I would listen to recordings. You have to record yourself. I'd listen to recordings and go, oh, I don't want to sound like, don't want to sound like that. I studied with a lot of teachers. I was desperate after a while to sing well. It wasn't really working, except one day I stumbled upon a teacher who, was doing some very strange things with my voice. He said one thing to me that made a difference, and it started me on the spiritual path as well. It started me thinking that I wanted to be a voice teacher. He told me, well, I always knew the tongue was a problem, but I didn't know what to do about it. Like the back of the tongue could get very tight and affect the voice. And he said to me, relax your tongue when you're around other people. And I thought, what a weird thing to say to a student, right? But I started to do that. I started to just think, okay, as I'm breathing, I'm going to relax. Like, like in a yoga class, you breathe in to relax muscles. It was kind of like that. I'd do it like a little mouth breath and relax the jaw. And do some mouth breathing like that. Feel the air coming over the back of my tongue. And just keep that area loose. I started to feel, what does a loose back of the tongue feel like? And that was a different sensation. I actually felt this space opening up in the back of my throat. That felt marvelous. I started to hang out with some people in my kids' school that, were kind of, snobby or whatever. They weren't so friendly. And I noticed that even though I would never be great friends with a lot of these women, if I just relaxed my tongue around them as they were talking to me, I was listening more to their words. All of a sudden, I'm hearing what they have to say, which makes me a lot more likable too as a person, because I'm actually listening to the other person. I'm hearing it, and I'm feeling, it's a strange thing, I'm allowing them to say what they have to say, and I'm less defensive about it in here and hearing what they have to say. And I found that I gave myself permission to speak, finally the first time in my life, in my 40s, to speak and to say what I had to say. And I really stopped disliking those people. I can't say we were friends, but there was, it wasn't a negative experience anymore. And the shift happened with me, not with them. So I felt that was extremely powerful, life-changing, and changed my personality a great deal. The other thing that it did, very surprisingly, is it took all that harshness out of my voice, or most of it anyway. And suddenly, I'm around people singing, and, let's say we're in a group or in a chorus or a synagogue or church, and, you're singing along, and suddenly everybody, but I mean, I was turning heads, and like I did as a teenager, and they would say, wow, that's your voice. It's gorgeous. It must be all natural. You never did anything. Of course, they didn't know how much I had been struggling. So that is the other awakening of my voice. I think the one when I was a teenager and just feeling that column of air. And the other was this relaxing my tongue. And I wasn't even warming up. I was just around other people. Affected my singing in a huge way. But I went on to study with a lot of different people, again, trying to understand, how does the voice work and how can I get myself to sound better? And I still had my good days and my bad days. It was a lot better after I relaxed my tongue, but it certainly wasn't as reliable and as good as I wanted it to be. I really wanted to sound fantastic. I was trying to find another career, and everyone said, well, you should be a voice teacher. And I'd get really mad. And I'd say, no. Because you know what? I had been to about 30 teachers at that point, and not one of them, except for the relaxing of the tongue issue, not one of them could really work with my singing voice and understand the voice the way I wanted. I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I did get a little bit out of this person and a little bit out of that and a little bit out of the other one. And I also learned what not to do, because, if you go to a teacher that says the wrong thing to you, makes things worse, you just go, okay, what happened? And you start to analyze. Let's flip that on its head and do the opposite. So I learned that way a lot. But I can't say that my voice was trained by anybody, even after trying 30-something people. So I ended up taking some vocal pedagogy courses. And this is how this happened. This is like the best story. So one day, I'm just a singer, and somebody from my synagogue said to me, can you give my daughter voices for her bat mitzvah? And, voice lessons. So she loves your singing. She heard you sing. I had given a performance at the synagogue, and she said, my daughter just loves your voice. Could you give her voice lessons? And I thought, wow, gee, maybe I could take on my first student. I know these people. And I said, all right. I just took it was like a leap of faith, because believe me, I didn't think I could be a voice teacher at all. And I didn't want to be a bad voice teacher, but I said, yes, let me try my best with this little girl. The same day, that day, I get a phone call from someone I hadn't heard from in a long time, who said to me, my sister just found out about a class you can take in the city where you can train to be a voice teacher if you're a singer with no experience and you want to learn how to teach. So the day that I said yes to my first student, the doors opened up. It was like divine intervention, synchronicity, whatever you want to call it. It was my calling. I knew then it was my calling. And I very enthusiastically signed up for a course on vocal health and learned about, how to keep the voice healthy, what the symptoms are of nodules and polyps and things of that nature. Anatomy is all about. So I took that course. It's with NYSTA, New York Singing Teachers Association. I took that course. Then I took vocal anatomy, which I loved. I took vocal acoustics, which was hard, but interesting. Learned all about formants and things like that. And vocal repertoire, comparative pedagogy, classes like that. I took a whole bunch of them through NYSTA. And then I just kept taking classes. So, and as I took classes, I grew as a voice teacher and as a singer, and I pretty much was able to fix my own voice with the help of a few hand-picked teachers that I met later on that helped me a great deal, but not too many. I studied Estel voice training, which was phenomenal, and Kitty Verdolini, studied with Anat Kaidar a little bit. So there were a lot of really wonderful people that have helped influence me, and I still take classes, go to the Voice Foundation when I can, as well as, conventions. I've become a voice geek. I want to know everything about the voice, how it works. So in the meantime, as I had this opening of my voice in my throat and I felt myself able to communicate, it really changed my life. Things just kept showing up. I got very interested in spirituality and very interested in how the body and spirituality combine with each other. And you can really, pretty much, I've learned that all your defense mechanisms are here in the throat, the back of the tongue, and in the larynx, because that's where we filter ourselves, and that's where we are protecting ourselves from the rest of the world. It's our interface between us and the world is right in here. So pretty fascinating stuff. Right now I've been studying a lot on A Course in Miracles, which is just phenomenal, and other things, matrix energetics, Joe Dispenza, Pam Grout. Those are some of my favorite people. I've been teaching now for around 20 years. I have trained so many voices and so many people who really couldn't sing at all, and people that are very good and just help them along to be better. Of people have become professionals or have just grown so much as singers and as people. I also do a spiritual voice workshop where I talk a lot about forgiveness and relaxing these defense mechanisms here so that you can hear other people and you can respond and be your authentic self and accept yourself as for who you are, not try to be something else. So your authentic voice is a spiritual voice as well as a physical voice. Anyway, that's my story in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed listening to me go on and on about myself. But if you are looking to study with me or to just learn about the journey of a singer, I just thought this might be a nice way to share. So everybody, blessings, have a wonderful day, keep singing, and just keep letting it flow. Take care.